All right, well, thank you all for joining. This is my first afikra forward. I'm really excited for it. So just a quick intro. My name is Hazem so the chapter says Boston and Seattle just because when I signed up, I was in Boston, but about 2 weeks ago, I just moved to Seattle. And I'm a civil engineer, so I've always been interested in infrastructure projects and like how these projects could help, improve the quality of life in general, not only for humans, but and just improve civilizations. So during COVID, as many of us have been like watching a lot of like TV shows and YouTube, I stumbled upon this great documentary by the National Geographic Film Showcase, which is called the Mauritania Railway, the Backbone of the Sahara, which was filmed by a cinematographer called Miguel de Olaso. This is the link to his page, and there is a link to the video on YouTube itself. And it is just a fascinating video that I couldn't stop talking about. So just a quick introduction. Let's talk about Mauritania. So Mauritania is a beautiful country in the Northwest Africa, bordering the Western Sahara, Senegal, Mali, and of course it's on the Atlantic Ocean. It is a big desert, the Sahara Desert. Only about 0.2% of that land is suitable for farming. So it is in a way, you can think of a harsh environment to live at. So the population of Mauritania is about 4.4 million. A third of that are nomadic Moors. So most of them are living, in the desert. But around the 70s and 80s, there was a severe drought that forced most of these people to move to urban cities. So Nouakchott is the capital, which you can see it here on the coast of the Atlantic coast. It was designed to house about like 8,000, 9,000 people at the time, and now it's housing around 1 million people in that city. Nouakchott, the country is very rich in natural resources. The most important one is iron ore, which represent over 50% of its export. Plus, yes, it is a desert and it's really drought, but its Atlantic coast is very rich with fishing as well. So the main thing here is the iron ore. And it's, as we said, it represents over 50% of their exports. So this leads us to this is just a cool picture, leads us to the railway. So the railway, the purpose of it was to transport the mined iron ore from the city of Zouerat, which is you see here in the northeast of Mauritania, transport that to the port in Nouadhibou, and then ship it for exporting. So this line was constructed in the 1960s and it was opened in 1963 in 3 years, which is an amazing progress in construction. So this line is a 730 kilometer line. The train length are 3 kilometers. So this is so long that if you just stand and you want the train to pass you, it's gonna go around over 10 minutes for it to completely pass you. And it transports over 17 tons of steel with every trip, and it does around 3 trips a day. This train is consistently running 365 days. They just doesn't stop. And just to give you perspective, this is steel, it's more than enough to build the Eiffel Tower. So in general, it's a very interesting, very nice infrastructural project. The sole purpose of building this train was to transport the iron ore from Zouerat mine all the way to Nouadhibou port. This is a cool picture of the train. And I think after watching that video, which most of you maybe would have the same thing, you will start to appreciate this more and more as we go. So one of the coolest things while watching this is to understand some of the unintended consequences that came out of building that railway. So again, as we said, it's a very drought country. Transportation is not easy. So one of the things that happened when that line was built is that a lot of merchants use that line to transport from, as it goes from Zouerat all the way to the port. So a lot of merchants would go into the port, buy fish, other goods, fuel, water, and they would go into hop on the train on the line, go all the way to Zouerat, and the train itself would stop at multiple stops where they can start sell these goods and services. The other good thing about this is that there's a lot of these people who are living in the desert that from the 60s to today started to live closer and closer to that railway line. And a lot of these, there's a lot of like people living in silos and in tents, and there's a lot of like small villages that people start to live near the line because it is their only connection to civilization and to outside world. And this train represented to them the lifeline that will provide them with basic survival needs, such as water, fuel, food, medicine sometimes. So this evolved into something that is like way much more important for these people than transporting iron ore. The very interesting thing about this is this train, again, it said it's just to transport iron ore. So that journey that these merchants would take that could go for 30 hours is not a very pleasant journey. It's actually very risky, and there's a high risk of death from falling. And if anyone knows the desert, it gets really, really hot in the morning and it drops severely at night. So it is not an easy journey to take. So in that video, you'll see a very interesting journey of this merchant. His name is Malik. So I just want to give you quickly an introduction about Malik. So Malik is a 27-year-old merchant. What he does is that he's originally from a city near Zouerat, the iron ore mine. He goes and he buys the fish and other supplies that he will be selling or some people need along the line. And he hops into that train. And during these multiple stops, he would stop. Sometimes he would just give basic needs to people on the line, or he would sell his fish. And then he would reach to his city near Zouerat. This journey takes him about 30 hours. He will rest for 2 days, and then he'll hop on the train again and go back to the port. And this entire trip would net him about $50. It is just fascinating after you look at some of these journeys, some of these stories. It's just so interesting that the sole purpose of this project was for the country's economical reasons to export and to benefit from it by exporting iron ore. But no one ever thought about that this line will become something way much bigger than what it is. It is right now the really a lifeline. It is everything to these people that are living around that line, and it is everything for these people that are for the merchants who are using it to go and buy stuff and sell stuff to live. But also the city of Zouerat, which is where the mine is, it's a city that is based on that mine. There are some schools, movie theaters. It's a small functioning city that everyone in there depends on that line operating for them to live. It's just amazing how a simple line really is. You can think of it as a lifeline for an entire people in that country. The other aspect of it, which is very, very interesting, is that how we know that there are countries and places that exist around the world. And we know that human life exists in these places, but you would never think about how do people live there? How do they survive? How does their system work out? So watching this video unintentionally made me think about this a lot. I never thought that a train that is made to transport iron ore is actually the lifeline of a lot of people to get food, fuel, water, and medicine, and basic survival needs. So it is just amazing, and stuff to look into other places in the world where you would ask, how do people live there? How do they get their food? How do they get their water? How do they get their medicine? It is just fascinating. So for next, I have some amazing links in here. You're going to find a lot of them, but there is a lot of people, a lot of tourists who would go there just for the adventure, and they would ride that railway just for the experience. It's unbelievable. It's hard. It's a challenge, but it is rewarding in terms of like the views that you see and the people that you meet. So I have some cool links for some cool ride stories that I've read. And then there is this documentary. It's an hour-long documentary by Al Jazeera that talks about the life of that train conductor. which I highly recommend. It's very interesting to see it from that perspective. And then the third thing that I would recommend everyone to do is start to think about other places in the world where you would wonder, how does human life exist there? How do they operate? How do they live there? And I think it will be, in a way, life-changing to look at other life environment and how it operates in places we know they exist. We just don't know anything about the people who live there. So that's it. That's my presentation. That's my email. That's my mobile number. Please contact me if you want to connect. I'm sorry I don't have any social media accounts, but thank you all and appreciate your time.